For those of you who did not attend my Wednesday night Bible study, and that was most of you, not saying anything, I thought I would share some of the insights from Walter Brueggemann's book, Names of the Messiah, with you. The first thing we learned was that Handel got the number of titles attributed to Jesus wrong. There are 4, not 5, and they are Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. Handel inserts a comma where it does not belong between the words wonderful and counselor. English teachers should feel vindicated that grammar does matter. I should know because I had to take freshman English over twice until I got it right. What also matters is understanding the context of the text. These 4 titles, Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace, were titles conferred on the newly crowned King of Israel. Moreover, this oracle from Isaiah was thought originally to apply to King Hezekiah. Ahaz, who is Hezekiah's father, is told by Isaiah to look at the pregnant woman with child as a sign of God's promise, deliverance from Israel's enemies, namely the Assyrians. Hezekiah is born and later is crowned king, but his reign does not end well. So Israel will look to a new king, a future king, who will fulfill the expectations associated with the titles Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. Brueggemann then looks at how Jesus does or does not fulfill these titles attributed to him. Let's take Wonderful Counselor, for example. In reality, it is a desire that the newly crowned king will exercise good governance. We can relate to that one, can we not? To do this, the king must possess wisdom. There can be no doubt that Jesus' Sermon on the Mount reflects a wisdom that surpasses that of Solomon, Israel's wisest king. For in the ministration of Jesus, if Jesus were on the throne instead of Caesar, what was once thought of as a curse now becomes a blessing. Hence, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Why would Jesus say such a thing when we know that this is not true in the world of Caesar? How can it be true in the world of Jesus? And the answer is, in the kingdom of God that has come and is coming, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Now moving on to the second title attributed to Jesus, Mighty God. We see in Jesus' teaching and in his miracles a new kind of power and authority that can only come from God. Take, for example, the Gospel of Mark, my favorite gospel. In Mark, we see Jesus that has the power to rebuke evil spirits, rebuke the wind and the wave, and he has the power to forgive sins. And the response of the crowd in the Gospel of Mark is, who can do such things? And the answer is, only God. Now let's move on to the third title attributed to Jesus, which is most problematic for the church. It's the title, Everlasting Father. It's most problematic for the church because Jesus is the Son who prays to the Father and teaches his disciples to pray to the Father. Think of the Lord's Prayer. It begins how? Our Father. As hard as Brueggemann tried to convince his readers that Jesus fulfilled the title Everlasting Father, the Bible study that I taught was not buying what Brueggemann was selling. They didn't believe it. I wonder if more Christians would be as discerning with the text and context. Maybe we would not be enthralled with people who worship money and power and status. And lastly, we look at the title Prince of Peace. This is the title that Jesus fulfills and redefines. Yes, Jesus brings peace, but it's not through the power of the sword as the Romans did. One should not confuse the peace of Christ with the peace of Rome. Jesus brings peace through the power of the spoken word. By preaching and practicing forgiveness, Jesus shows us how to be at peace with God, at peace with neighbor, and even at peace with our enemies. Only when this kind of peace occurs can people and nations feel safe enough to lay down weapons and live in peace. This is what the peaceable kingdom is all about. And to think, it has already happened. And it is happening because a baby was born in Bethlehem. We too can be born again to welcome the peace of Christ into our hearts and into our lives. The peace of Christ be with you. The peace of Christ be with you.
And also with you.
Share that peace. Not share hello. Share the peace of Christ with your neighbor, but share it with someone you don't know. Take a few minutes to do that, and I'll conclude my sermon. Because the peace of Christ is that important, that we experience it and are willing to share it. Now share it with someone you don't know.